kind words of introduction. I'm extremely flattered and honored to be the recipient of this recognition this evening. When moments like this come up, one of the things you think about is how you got to a place like the place that you're at now. And I can't help but to think, and I've been thinking about this all day and for the last couple of weeks now, is how did I get here? How did I become an archivist? Most archivists find or come into the profession in a fairly circuitous means. People don't wake up like as a child and say, I'm going to be an archivist when I grow up. I want to collect, preserve, and make historical documentary evidence available to reason. That's just not how it usually works, and that's not how it worked with me and most people in my field. For me, a very good friend and mentor, James Spady, introduced me to this field and suggested I go back to school to pursue an education in archival administration, in this case from the University of Delaware. And it took to, I was in a very dead-end kind of profession for a number of years, and it just grabbed hold of me. And so I'm really glad that it did. And then after I got my degree, I came to Wayne State, which was 29 years ago, in fact. But even before all that, I believe I was an archivist even before I knew what an archivist was. When I was in undergraduate school at Morehouse College in Atlanta, Georgia, I remember the dean of the chapel, a guy by the name of Dean Lawrence Carter. He told the freshman class, we had something called freshman orientation, which I usually hated. It's once a week kind of thing. And but he told our class, he said, don't call home too much. This is way before cell phones. Long distance chargers and collect phone calls is very expensive. He says, don't call home too much. Write letters. Write a letter every day and keep a copy of every letter that you write. And I wasn't that diligent. I wrote a lot of letters when I was in college. College for me was very fascinating. I'm from New York City originally. I went to a predominantly white school in New York, and going to a historically black college at Morehouse in Atlanta it was just exciting for a whole range of reasons. So I wrote letters, wrote my friends letters, kept copies of them. They didn't write back a whole lot, but that's just how it is, and that was okay. And so fast forward, some years later, as I mentioned, my mentor suggested this program, and I got into it, and next thing I know, I'm here at Wayne State as archivist for the Service Employees International Union for about 17 years. The Archives of Labor and Urban Affairs, where I worked with the library, is the home to a number of large international labor unions, and SEIU was one of them. And then for the past 12 years, I've been the archivist I've been the field archivist, so it's my job to go out and convince people to give us their stuff, which I very enjoy doing. I like to nurture relationships with donors, prospective donors, and share with them what it is to be an archivist and why it's important, why the records are important. One collection I'll make reference to, in particular, I think it's very meaningful and timely in its own kind of way, is we're now the home to an organization called Detroit Will Breathe. And some of you may know, at least one person knows this organization. This is an organization that came into being immediately after the murder, the heinous, tragic, brutal murder of George Floyd. And so they had demonstrations throughout Detroit, and there were protests, and they had posters that they donated to us. We also have 1.3 terabytes of videos that are now part of our holdings. They're not available to the researchers yet, but they will be at some point. And this is important work because at some point that collection, I've brought dozens and dozens of collections in all over the years, but that collection, and many others too, but that collection comes to mind because 5, 10, 15 years, or many more years from now, you'll be seeing clips from these demonstrations that are in our archives. You'll see these in documentaries and the subjects of dissertations and articles and books and exhibits in museums. And it will be why you remember this event, because of someone thought to donate them to an archive like the one that I work at. This is all such a critical period of history. Archives has been center stage for a number of weeks now, and for more than that. I hate to use his name, but former President Donald Trump, as we all know, stole records from the National Archives And it's because the archivist stood up and said, no, that's not appropriate to do that, you can't do that, and that's why he's being taken to task for that. For a number of years, I taught in the archival education program here, the introductory level course in archival administration. And one of the first class sessions, one of the assignments I give them, one of the readings is on where the modern archives movement came from. And it came from the French Revolution. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that happened during the French Revolution is that it was determined by the folks that instigated that moment, is that they needed to keep government officials accountable. And the way they could do that is through the records. And that these records need to be open and available to the public, which is why the National Archives is playing such a vital role in holding up our democracy. Democracies can wither without records being there to hold people accountable. So that's so very important. I just thought it very important to mention that. I also have to mention Christine Darpa. It's so funny. I didn't think you would remember that moment during your interview. Ironically, Harold Pinkett, I met him at my very first conference of the Society of American Archivists in 1992 in Philadelphia. That's where I was living at the time. James Spady, who was my mentor, introduced me to him. And ironically, he and I corresponded with one another for a short period after that. He's since then passed. And so about 5 years ago, I get a phone call from someone that's doing some research on Harold Pinkett. A guy named Alex Poole, whose name you may or may not know. But so he gives me a call and he sees my letters in the Harold Pinkett collection at the Moorlands Vanguard collection. And so I have this personal connection. And so my records are a part of an archive, you know. So that's, I just thought about that as you were sharing your story. But I'm not even sure there's a way to conclude this other than to say I'm very, very thankful and honored and flattered, and I found this field so meaningful, and like a lot of the presenters here today, I need to thank my wife, even in her absence, and my parents, and the support they given me growing up as a kid. They never questioned why I was studying history. It never came out of their mouths. So I'm appreciative to them. Thank you again.